Hello and welcome to the Sales Show. I'm Marie Kirkpatrick, your sales and business strategist. I'm a mum, a wife, and a multi-business owner myself. With over 15 years experience in sales and business, I have worked with startups all the way through to multi-million dollar companies. I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I love helping service-based businesses make an income as well as an impact. Let's jump into talking about all things sales and business. Hello and welcome back to the Sales Show. I'm your host, Marie Kirkpatrick, and today we have an amazing Facebook ads and funnel expert. Her name is Natalie, and she is a Facebook ads and funnel strategist for coaches, course creators, and those selling programs online. Now, I know that our audience, we have such a wide mix of people, and so I feel like this is something that is so beneficial that everyone wants, but there's so much noise about it on the internet, and we throw so much money at Facebook ads and to Zuckerberg and his mates that I believe that we just really need to get into the nitty gritty. So Natalie has been doing this for a very long time, over 12 years honing her skills in this. And so I wanted to bring her onto the Sales Show today for those people that are like, I need to look at my funnels, I need to look at my Facebook ads, and what does that look like? So today we're going to talk about the amazing skills that you can add into your tool belt as you grow your business around Facebook ads and funnels. But I also want to get into the nitty gritties with Natalie about what are those things that we really need to focus on and what do we need to have sorted before we jump into the Facebook and funnel side of life. I know from me as from a sales perspective, I think sometimes people jump into Facebook ads a little bit too soon. But Natalie and I can talk about that. So I can't wait. So welcome to the Sales Show, Natalie. So great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a wonderful intro.
Pleasure. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into this?
So it was interesting. I was at a conference. I wasn't at a conference. My husband was at a conference on the weekend. I was having this conversation way back in, let's call it 2008. I was at a live workshop and there was this guy talking about how to use Facebook for business. And I remember thinking, I actually know more than this guy. And I was in business with my mum. I rang her up and I said, Mum, we're going to start running Facebook workshops. And she's like, okay. So we started teaching people how to organically use Facebook. So this is, way back when we were just getting pages and all of those types of things. And then I had developed, so I went from face-to-face workshops to webinar workshops to like a full course that I created. And I was trying to sell it via a webinar and I couldn't get enough people on the webinar each week to be able to get my numbers to work out in terms of how many people I wanted on the webinar to convert and all of those types of things. I'm a big data nerd, so I kind of knew all the numbers.
Love it.
Then I started playing around with ads to basically drive the number of registrations up on the webinar, knowing that in 7 days that it would all work out and I would get my money back and start to profit from it. So over kind of the next 6 to 12 months, I dived deep into ads. I spent over $100,000 on ads. I was making, 5 figures a month from, at the time, it was a $97 course. It did increase over time and was just really in the trenches doing all the bits and pieces myself, which I think is super important because I've worked with a lot of people that are just starting on ads. And when it's your own money, it's like, and they get this reaction of, oh crap, is this going to work? And because I've been through that process of knowing, a couple of $100, okay. But then when it's like, I remember I had a coach say to me, well, what would happen if you spent $4,000 a month on ads? And I'm like, what would happen if I spent $4,000 on ads? And then you kind of put it in, you work the numbers and you're like, okay, this would work. But then it still feels like when it's your own money, it still feels hard. So I've kind of been through that whole realm. And now I work with clients who one of them spends like 130 grand a month on ads. And it's just, you're not desensitized to it, but it's just such a bigger number from where I started so long ago. Yeah. And you just kind of work through the motions of it. So.
See, I've never run ads in my business. I've grown my business very much organically and it's worked beautifully for me. I also sit and wonder, what would happen if I played with Facebook ads and what would that growth look like and things like that as well. But even the idea of spending like $1,000 a month on ads makes me go, oh, feels like gambling. I feel like I don't have everything sorted out. So what would you suggest are like maybe 3 or 5, maybe even 10 things that people need to have sorted before we even go into Facebook ad land?
Yeah. So there's kind of two schools of thought on this, and it kind of goes back to the time versus money thing. So if you are coming into your business and you're newer and you might have been made redundant or you've saved up or whatever, and you've got the money, then you can use ads to really help you accelerate your learnings and get some data in terms of messaging and what's going to resonate with your audience. So those people are obviously in a different bucket to people that are trying to bootstrap everything. And in that case, they're better to start using organic content to really nail in on their messaging, along with I'd still recommend that people, when they're starting out, still do networking, like face-to-face networking and outreach and those types of things, just to really dial in on what your messaging is. Facebook ads work best when you know who your audience is and you know what your messaging is. So it's not to say you can't do it if you don't know those things, but it does make the process easier. The other thing we also find is a lot of people are like, yep, I've got an offer that works. I've done a few launches. It really works well. Then they use ads and ads fail. And the reason that they fail is because they're used to selling to a warm audience. Where Facebook ads traditionally were bringing in, you can still definitely sell to a warm audience, but the idea is to bring more people into your funnel. So you're selling to a cold audience. So they haven't necessarily tested their messaging on a cold audience.
Yeah.
Which is really, really key. So then in terms of what to get ready, it just really depends, because we have ad strategies that are like top of funnel videos that are designed to attract people to your pages, and you can do them for like $1 a day. Then we have nurture campaigns that are designed to help you dominate the news feed so that you're not relying on the algorithm, because we know that the algorithm does what it wants half the time. And those can be like $10 a day. And then there's people that want to generate leads and build their email list, and that's kind of a little bit more. And then when you're trying to direct to sale, that's a little bit more as well. So there's kind of ad strategies that work across the spectrum. Most people that I will run ads for have kind of launched their course a few times. They kind of know what their messaging is, they know their numbers, and they want someone to help them kind of add fuel to that fire. But then I do also work with people like in a different capacity where I teach them to run their own ads. And some of those people have never set up an ad account before. They've just been, because I work with a lot of coaches, they're in the stage where they're working one-to-one, which is great, and they're getting their packages sorted out, but it's really hard to scale. And that's when they want to start using ads. And it's also when they're like, oh, I really should have focused on building my email list prior, so that they can keep that steady flow of clients while they're building out their course or whatever that scalable offer is.
Yeah. What I see happen is people spend a bucket ton of money on Facebook ads and their messaging is not hitting point at all, or their conversion rate is rubbish. And so they keep throwing money at it going, I've just got to spend more. I've just got to spend more. And I'm like, what's your conversion rate?
Yeah.
Even to a warm audience, or even if you're jumping on a call one-on-one, what does your conversion rate look like? And if it's not high enough, work on your conversion rate first, figure out messaging, and then throw money behind it.
Yeah.
Instead of just literally giving Zuckerberg your cash. Yeah.
Most of the time, ads don't fail. It's the funnels and the conversions that do. Yeah. So like I could set up an ad and I could send, 100 or 1,000 people, like you say, to your page. But if it doesn't talk to what your customer wants, it's not going to work. And it's not that the ads were set up badly, or even necessarily that the messaging on the ads was wrong, because we got enough people to click through. It's just when they landed on that page, it didn't solve the issue or talk to what they were talking about.
Absolutely. And tell me, give me a couple of tips for people that are just starting off, that are probably under the 6 figures, haven't even made their 100K yet, and are looking at Facebook ads. Because on this podcast, we have startups, small to medium, and 7-8 figure plus audience. If we start at that lower end, what would your advice be for those people?
So I'm a big believer in that the online world is so, I think we were talking about it before, oversaturated with too much information. And I think we've gotten ourselves into this process, and it's probably driven by a lot of coaches, that we just need to keep creating content. Like, show up online, you need to do this, you need to post a reel, you need to do this. I think what we need to do is take a step back, and we need to look at what are the core things that our clients really need. And then we just need to create, let's say, 5 to 10 pieces of really good content. And then we can use ads, and depending on what they are, like let's say they're videos or they might be a blog, you can start those relatively low, $1 a day, $2 a day. And all you're doing is attracting a broader audience to either your website or your social platform. So at the moment I have 2 videos actually from the panel that we were both on for Tina's event, and I run them to a general broad audience. I'm paying $1 a day, and then the goal is to get people to interact with the video and then also my Instagram profile, and then I retarget them. So retargeting is when you show anyone that interacted with that video another video, and that the second video is kind of more geared towards the work that I do, if that makes sense. So it's kind of moving people on that journey. The other thing I would say is, again, with some really good reels, you might have had some reels go viral, some stories that are really good. Put a little bit of ad spend, again, $1 a day, just to kind of reach more people in your news feed. Because what I'm hearing is that people are creating obscene amount of content. They're not getting the reach on it. And then the way that they feel that they can solve that is to make more content. But if you just take the content you've got and show it to more of your audience.
Yeah.
So let's say you did a 60-second video and you pointed out an issue that people have, and then the call to action was to get people to book a discovery call with you or visit your website. You could put $1 or $2 a day behind that, even just to your warm audience on, say, Instagram. And that in itself is going to tell you whether people resonate and whether they actually click and take an action. Yep. So you can use that to test your messaging, and then you're not relying on continually showing up all the time. The other thing that I do with clients, all the way from like the one that's spending $130,000 a month all the way to people that are spending $1,000 a month, is we set up a nurture campaign, which is basically showing a different piece of content over a period of, say, 5 or 10 days within the news feed. So we're not bombarding your warm audience with the same piece of content over and over again. We're just showing them a different piece, because we know, and you'd know the numbers better than I would, it used to be something like 21 touch points or something before people make a sale. I'm sure it's probably 40 or 50 now.
Yeah, it's a lot higher these days.
Yeah. So this just kind of keeps you relevant in the news feed, and you're spending $10 a day just showing content to people that have already put their hand up and decided to follow you, and you're building that journey with them. So it could be testimonials, it could be videos that highlight the gap in their knowledge, it could be a call to action video. And it just means that you are not then relying on Facebook and Instagram showing your content. You're taking back that control. And the way I do it, like, I've actually gone to a 9-post grid, so I don't post anything on my grid anymore. And so people still see me in the newsfeed because I'm using a behind the scenes ad strategy to show that content to people.
Interesting. Okay. And what about for the people that are in that middle range? What should they be doing differently compared to the startup?
So they should definitely be doing that first part as well. And because the key to that part, and it's difficult to sell people on sometimes, because it's not, if we look at a traditional funnel, we know that a lead came in, they took an action and they purchased. So it's really easy to track the data. When we're looking at nurturing and building relationships with people, the data is a little bit, we can't track someone that watched that video and if they did this and then they did that. So I definitely think they should still be doing that. Like, it's a small percentage of most people's ad budget. Then the next stage is really lead gen. And you need to be building your email list, but you want to do it in a variety of different ways. And that would depend on where you're at with your business. So some people will just have like a PDF or a checklist or something, and they're just getting the email address and they just want to get people on their list. They do a welcome sequence and then, their regular newsletter, and they're building that relationship ready for their next launch, or next time they've got some special offer. Other people can do a similar thing, and they'll have more emails in there to build relationships with the idea to get people to book a call. Or what a lot of people are leaning more towards now is, instead of a PDF or a checklist, they'll put in instead a video series or a webinar, some type of event that you can run on Evergreen. But the goal is that we know that video and webinar, because they're generally a little bit longer, there's that face-to-face interaction with people. Well, you're not seeing their face, but they're seeing yours. You can build that relationship faster, which means that we have clients now that can run a lead gen campaign that goes to, say, an Evergreen webinar, and they're generating new leads, but they're also paying back their ad spend. So the first step with that funnel is to kind of get the ad spend to 1. So for every dollar we spend, we get $1 back, which then means that what they're doing is they can spend more on ads because they're not out of pocket. Like, obviously cash flow is a different thing, but they're not necessarily out of pocket for their ad spends. They're getting that money back, but they're building their list so that when they launch again, they have new people they can then nurture between their next launch. So that's kind of the next step for most people, because I do also talk to a lot of people that have, 10,000 plus followers on Instagram and their email list is less than 1,000. Like, they have such a small email list, and no one jumps up in the morning to go onto Instagram to see what they can buy. Like, it's a social platform. They look at the content. Yeah. And, the sales generally happens off Instagram. I know there's a whole big thing around DMing and all of those conversations, and that's where they happen, but they don't generally happen on your feed. So by taking people out of that environment, you're giving yourself another chance to follow up with them and really build that relationship. And there has been a lot of talk over, are webinars dead, and, are people still buying? And I think it comes down to the messaging and making sure that you are solving the problem that people have, but also building up your expertise that you're the one to help them solve that problem. Yeah. I've got people that have got courses, anything from like $447 to $2,000 that are selling them on Evergreen.
I think I've got 2 questions for you just on top of that. I think, well, first of all, I think the webinar is just literally the vehicle that we are using to get our message and to sell through 100%. Anyway. So I don't believe that webinars are dead, but what I see sometimes is sneaky, slimy ways that people like come to my webinar and they act like it's live, but it's a complete crock of rubbish.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, are you telling people to run ads to a webinar that is considered live, or is it more like a evergreen training type thing? Or how do you look at that?
I leave it up to the customer, but we do make sure that if you are using a webinar software that, you can clearly, well, most people can, but some people can't. We would never put in the ad copy, join us live, if it's not live. And I think, it comes down to that integrity that you have with yourself and your business and your customers, which I think is becoming I don't know. I think there's still always going to be the bro marketers that like to spam, that like to sell, this whole big webinar that actually provides no value whatsoever. And then there's always going to be the other group of people, which we're part of, that really genuinely care and are running things in an appropriate way. When I was running Evergreen webinars, just like in the last 6 months, I actually put mine on an on-demand. So it was just a video that you could go and watch. So there's pros and cons to both, because obviously if it's set up to look like you choose a time, people are more likely to turn up. But then I know that I never turn up to live webinars because I just don't have the time and don't have the inclination, where putting things on demand, people can stop and start, they can watch it when they want. And when I ran the numbers based on my live versus the on-demand for book calls, the calls that were booked through the on-demand one were actually cheaper. So that's because I understand how my audience is. They're like me, they're busy. Like, if they're looking for a higher end ad solution, they don't have time to, be at your webinar at 10 a.m. They want to watch it when they want to watch it. They want to stop and start and fast forward. And I watch everything at 2.5 speed. They want that flexibility. So I think it comes down to knowing who your audience is and working out what you feel best within yours. I had another client that ran an Evergreen webinar, and the special was, when you joined her membership site, you got all these bonuses. And I'm like, that's really good. That's great. She goes, I felt bad for the people that didn't buy through it, so I'm giving everyone the bonuses. I'm like, that's fine. Like, that's your priority. I'm like, the psychology behind it, blah, blah, blah. But and she didn't advertise that everyone got the bonuses. It was just like, you joined, I had this promotion on, so you got the bonuses. So it was just a nice surprise and delight for people. So I genuinely leave it up to people for them to make their decision. But I do agree, there's always going to be some of the market that have got no idea it's not live. And then there's going to be people that know like all the platforms and how it all works and those types of things.
I just find from an integrity point of view, it really messes with my head in that sense. But what I've also found is even when I've done workshops for other people in business, I've had people come back to me 6, 12, 18 months later that'll say to me, wow, I've actually just watched your masterclass on X, Y, and Z, and I'm wondering if I can book in for a chat and to see how you can help me. And I'm like, 18 months ago, I can't even remember how I was talking about in that. So for me, and I think if your messaging is on point and what you do is so crystal clear, then that integrity goes with it. Yeah, I just don't like the slimy things that people do. Tell me, how do you feel like ad strategies can help boost from a sales perspective? I know you were talking about retargeting and things like that. I'm a huge believer in taking people off assets you don't own.
Yes, 100%.
And into assets that you do own.
Yeah.
Make sure that actually happens.
So I was actually talking to this guy over the weekend who's in recruitment. And so we were talking about, he spends quite a bit on recruitment services with LinkedIn. And we're talking about how on Meta you could run some really simple ads that, again, are not a huge amount. Like if someone's landed on a certain page within your website, you could then show them an ad in the news feed that says, hey, I saw you were checking out blah, 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 blah. Do you want to book a call?
That specific page, you mean?
Yeah. So it's just that reminder stuff because we know that people need so many touch points. So if we've done all the work, whether it's SEO or networking or whatever, and we've got them to our website, if we can't then get their email address and then also email them, then retargeting through ads is another touch point. And I recommend doing both because we know that, you know, let's say you send 100 emails, most people's open rates are 30%. Doesn't mean everyone reads every word. There's still that 70% of people that were actually interested but didn't necessarily open the email. So I do think that you can set it up. You can set it up for specific pages or every page on your website, just depending on what the strategy is behind it. But I do think it is something that is super key for people to be able to get more business sales calls, whatever they need.
Yeah. How important is it for people to know their ideal client target audience when it comes to ads?
100%, like super important. It's, I believe, particularly now so Meta in their ads manager has released a lot of AI learning tools. So we've got